in the United Arab Emirates, any form of lending outside the authorized financial institutions is illegal.
Accident happened, and this is like environment and water damages and disaster happens for all the properties. Who's in the hook for the repair in the UAE?
Basically, if somebody comes into your property and there's something around and they trip and they slip and they fall over and they end up in hospital, they could potentially sue the owner of the property or building. And lawyers are not scary. We're human beings just like everyone. I encourage the public to use us as much as they can, approach us and get guidance as much as they can.
Before we dive into this treasure or trove of wisdom, here's a little something from the heart. Every subscription, every like, every share means the world to us. It's not numbers, it's about incredible community we're building together. So if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe, drop a like, and share with your friends.
Monday Talkers, joining us today, Jennifer Arkhurst, UK solicitor and UAE legal entrepreneur. Welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me, Daniel.
Going back to you, Jennifer. Let's start by getting to know a bit more. Who are you and what's your story?
Okay, I am Jennifer Arkhurst, and as Daniel has already introduced me, I'm a British lawyer. I specialize in corporate, commercial, energy and oil and gas law. I have a law firm here in the UAE. It's an award-winning firm, highly ranked and well-respected in the UAE. Jennifer is, very bold. She is relentless, she is determined, and she can be quite creative. And that comes across in the legal services that I provide and all the products and services that I've introduced to the business community over the last few years, especially starting with the pandemic. So that is me in a nutshell. If I take you through, if you want to know how I started my journey, I'm able to tell you that also.
Well, I would love to call it from suits to startup. So you went from climbing corporate ladder to starting your own firm. Now it has its own reputation. First, let's know what made you take that leap, and let's see, did you face any epic challenges as a new legal entrepreneur here in UAE? Let's spill the tea.
Yes, of course, every lawyer that comes to the UAE from their respective countries find it challenging because you have to learn, it's a new country with its own laws and you have to learn it very quickly. Mm-hmm. And I have to do that as a foreign lawyer. I'll say it took me about a year. There are certain aspects that are similar, but of course different because you got to, it's a civil law jurisdiction, and also you have the Sharia aspect of the laws here. So it took quite a bit of adjusting as well as adjusting to the culture. But basically, I came into the business community. I don't think I quite fitted into the corporate world quite exactly, because a lot of the companies that I worked for during my career were good companies, but I think I felt a little bit constrained in the corporate world, because sometimes you have good ideas and maybe perhaps the boss doesn't want to know what you have to say, or it's not implemented. But in the business community, I found freedom. I found freedom to express myself through my products and services, to be creative. I become very creative as an entrepreneur, and to come up with services and solutions to help people with their problems. And of course, being an entrepreneur and being the CEO and master of your own ship, you can steer it the way you want, and you can implement your ideas, and there's nobody around to knock it down. So that is why I came into the business community. And I love being an entrepreneur. I don't think I will ever go back to the corporate world. It's just
aren't we all, right? Okay, yeah. When you say you will have more freedom, when you're your own boss. I mean, with the packages and ideas you come up with. Did you really live that experience when you already established your own?
There are several entrepreneurs that say the same thing I've just said. They found freedom when they started their own businesses because they're not constrained into a corporate type of culture where you have to show up at work at a certain time. If you're late, you have to find excuses. You have to basically be told, do what you're told. But in business,
and this creativity, yeah, you were talking about creativity and creative solutions out of this, just like systematic 9 to 5. Did it work when you decided to go alone?
yes, it worked. It worked because of, I think it's to do with my personality. I've got a strong character, and when I came into business, I was very determined, and failure was not an option. I was determined to succeed at all costs, and I also wanted to make an impact. And so, yes, that's where I am today.
Okay, I love to talk to lawyers just like I'm talking to a doctor. I explain symptoms and the story, and then they will find me an exit. How about that for a coach?
Sure.
Okay, let's talk money. We've all been there. A friend needs a loan, but how to navigate that situation without blowing the relationship with my friend and, of course, my bank account. So, what tips would you like to share for lending or borrowing legally in your area?
Well, generally, I mean, lending is not an issue in a lot of countries because, yes, we all do have friends who get into some difficulties, or even relatives that would like to, help them out. But unfortunately, in the United Arab Emirates, any form of lending outside the authorized financial institutions is illegal. Now, a lot of people don't know this. You can't lend to an individual, and it's not permissible to lend to a company either. So whether it's an investor lending to a company because it's in difficulty, or friends lending to each other, it's illegal. But people do it anyway, and I think the difficulties they're going to
It's illegal.
It's illegal, yes.
Oh, all right.
Yes, it's illegal because the government per se says that, if you're not authorized by us or central bank, then you cannot lend to anyone. And so it's not allowed, but people do it anyway. And the difficulty they tend to have is that you'll find that the debtor, the person they've lent the money to, at times doesn't, meet their commitments. They'll promise to pay and they don't pay. And then you have to think about what your options are. There's several people that, lend without any security. And if the person doesn't pay you and you gave them the money in cash, then where's your proof? You've lost your money, literally. There's some people that lend on the back of, post-dated check. Some people want to lend also with some form of security. What the public need to understand is that the law around bounce checks changed a couple of years ago. So now if you lend somebody money and take a post-dated check and return in the United Arab Emirates, unless it's of, the amount owed is very high, like 200,000 dirham or a lot higher, there's not much you can do with the person in terms of the police and law enforcement. I mean, the only thing that they'll do is to give, the particular person a fine if you report them. But the next stage is you just don't want them to have a fine, but you want your money back. And when they go to court, these are some of the hurdles they're going to have to overcome. Number one, how did you lend this money? It's illegal. The other side can go and get lawyers now, just, defeat your claim. Even though you have a post-dated check, how are you going to convince the judge that what you were doing was legal, and so forth? There are some people as well that lend on the back of what you call a promissory note, which is like a simple contract. It's like an IOU contract, plus a post-dated check. In the past, these two instruments were recognized. You could do a lot with it. You could get people jailed. Before the law changed, you could get people jailed. You could use the promissory note to, enforce your rights in court. But the law in the UAE keeps changing all the time. And now any form of lending is not legal. If there's any
So,
element of interest,
huh,
it's any element of interest involved where you're saying, okay, this is the capital I'm giving you, but you've got to pay me interest. It becomes a criminal offense if you
ooh,
include interest. And this applies to individuals as well as businesses in the UAE, as well as companies outside the UAE. So, the long arm of the law reaches to different jurisdictions, and that's why it's probably not good to do it. But as lawyers, we got a different way of advising people to
yeah,
do it, especially
that's my question. If we want to make it legal, how
Yes.
we can jump through when lending money to someone in need in the UAE?
Okay. The best thing to do it, the best way to do it is to go into that situation or, arrangement as an investor. And instead of just giving the money, you can have contracts with the person that wants your money such that that debt is capable of being converted into shares. So you have equity in the business. It's called convertible notes. It's a better way than outright lending money to the business because you may find that, when you need to enforce, you cannot get it back. You can't even have a situation where, the lender says, okay, take this money and I want security over your properties that you have in Dubai, for example. That is also not allowed because, the only institutions that are allowed to take security over people's property in this country are the banks in a form of a mortgage. So we've got ways in which we can structure, the lending. There are some investors that would like to do, advance money and get a post-dated check. But again, the law changed most recently such that you cannot have a situation where, the person has to pay you back eventually, and you've got a check that you can bank as well, because potentially you could have a situation where there's a double win for the lender. So that is not allowed. So I advise anybody that wants to lend money, especially business owners, to approach lawyers so that they can structure it properly. With individuals, you can potentially lend to your family because the law sees that as, almost like a gift.
Yeah.
In many countries, if you lend to your family, what is your siblings, cousins, and so on, if there's any dispute, the law sees it, can treat it easily as a gift. And so they won't come down hard on the lender. But it's when the lending is to friends or strangers, that's when you have all the complications coming in. So it's a difficult situation, I know. I know in some communities in the UAE, they have they do some kind of fundraising, for people in
I know
difficult. So
about
they have,
fundraising. It's completely illegal unless it
yes,
is
it's
like
completely
authorized.
illegal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know.
exactly. Yeah.
But
Yeah, people
lending
do that.
money between people and individuals is not allowed. Oh my God,
It's not
that's
allowed,
a surprise.
unfortunately. Yes, it's not allowed. I
Okay.
can't understand the logic behind it, but it's just there. It's not allowed. It's just blanket, black and white. You can't do it. So if people do it, they got to realize the risk that they're getting themselves into if they try to enforce or they're not paid.
Okay, I gotta get the most beneficial with this interview. So I will move to another scenario. Okay, so it's because it's common. Employees while working in corporates or if they are employees, like, can they launch their own business while they are still working at their job? Is this like, are there any legal restrictions that they should be aware of to do this step?
Yes, the restrictions tend to be contractual in that, most employers will not want their staff to be setting up competing business with them because there's a danger that they're going to tout their customers, if you know what I mean. They're going to be touting customers and using the same service providers that the company use. So you find in a lot of employment contracts, there's that restriction. that, while you're working, and typically 3 years after you leave, you're not to set up a competing business with us. Otherwise,
Yeah.
really against you. But you find some companies that are very flexible, and they deal with these issues on a case-by-case basis. So you can approach them and say, well, for example, I'm a lawyer, I'm working for a law firm, and I want to set up a restaurant with my family. I can approach the management and say, well, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to be a shareholder. Is it okay? And then it's down to the management to decide, well, she's doing something completely different. There's no risk to our business. So yes, we can give her an NOC and she can go off and do it. But I think the risk that people find or take is that they go off, whether they're in the job or after they've left, they go and set up an exactly same business as the employers, and that is difficult. The smart way, I'll say, to deal with this is you can go into the same sector, but please don't set up exactly the same, don't have the same activities as your employer. For example, IT is just so broad. So if your employer is dealing with general IT services of a certain nature, you can perhaps go into, you can go into other areas that are not competing with them, and that's fine. Because even if they find out that you have this business, you can point to the contract, your employment contract, and say, well, I'm not doing exactly what you're doing. I'm not competing with you. It's completely different. And
let's dig more into this. Like you are a lawyer, and you will move from the corporate life into your own business. You will not be a dentist, like, for example, right? So what exactly can be defined as, I'm not doing the same thing you're doing? So what is allowed? Like, can you define this in a lawyer, for example, lawyer background?
Okay, fine. I think the lawyers that are at risk are those who work in private practice, because you have different lawyers. You have some lawyers that work in government as part of the legal team. You have some lawyers that work in companies as part of the legal team. And you have those who work in private practice with the private law firms. So they are the ones that are most at risk, because typically their employer will put in their contracts that any client that you deal with is our client, is not yours when you're ready to leave, and you're not supposed to set up a competing business with us. So if you go and set up a business whereby it's the same niche as them, as you know, in law, we have different disciplines. We're just like lawyers. We specialize in different things. So if the law firm is, specializing in family law practice, and you are going to set up, say, for example, a corporate commercial firm or a criminal, then it's not exactly competing with them. So they're not likely to have an issue if they find out. But if it's exactly competing with them, and potentially they feel you might be taking their clients, the clients that you work with, because some people do these things, then you're going to have an issue with it. What the law says is that any restriction in employment contracts has to be reasonable in scope and geographically. So they can't say, look, don't set up your law firm in the entire UAE. That is not reasonable. If they want to restrict it to Dubai or only Abu Dhabi, that's reasonable. You can go to another emirate and set up your practice. And the scope as well has to be reasonable. You can't set up a law firm at all that, regardless of what you're going to be, your services are going to be, that's not reasonable. So the law looks at it in this way. There's some element of flexibility so that people have that freedom to switch from, corporate world to entrepreneurship. But I think on a case-to-case basis, if any employee is thinking about doing that, it's best to go and consult with a lawyer to make sure you're on the safe side and you get appropriate advice before you set up.
That's what I was going to highlight. Like, before you sign employment contract, and you have this idea in the back of your mind, or even maybe it's not there yet, but at some point you will have your own firm. So, for example, civil law is very generic, right? It's like, if I want to continue my own specialty, it's going to be difficult with this kind of contract I'm signing. So you have to be aware at the beginning. So this applies to everything. It's not like only lawyers, right?
It applies to everyone, yes.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about. Let's do another jump. Okay. Let's talk about the recent happening in UAE, the weather. Uh, Accident happened, and this is like environment and water damages and disaster happens for all the properties. Who's in the hawk for the repair in the UAE? The tenant, the landlord, when water leaks or heavy rain strikes, for my car, for everything, and what's called property. So what's the get out of it?
Generally, the landlords or the owners of the property are responsible for maintenance repairs of those properties, because if you're going to rent to somebody else, you have to make sure it's in a good state for their use and comfort, and it's relevant. And this is in the law in Dubai and other Emirates as well. The heavy rains cause a lot of debate as to who should be responsible for all of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the answer is, first and foremost, it's the landlord. But typically, you also find that in several tenancy agreements, the landlords try to limit their exposure because they don't want to be called out and be responsible. For example, you put in a cooker in the apartment, and 3 months later, the tenants start complaining, and you got to go and fix it. Then it happens again, and you keep fixing it. So what the landlords do, which the law allows, the Dubai landlord and tenant laws allow, I'm sure the same as in other Emirates, is that generally it states that the landlord is responsible unless agreed otherwise. So which means you can agree otherwise in your contracts with the tenant. You can push all that responsibility to the tenant if he's going to accept it or she's going to accept it, or you can push certain elements of it to the tenant. So what a lot of landlords do here is that in the contracts, they state, well, okay, anything below 500 dirham, for example, tenant, you're responsible, because they know that those are going to be minor repairs. Like, okay, the AC needs cleaning, you do it. There's the tap is cleaning. The cost is not going to be that much. So you push that on to the tenant. And anything above that financial threshold, which is 500 dirham, then that is major work. Then the landlord will deal with it. But with a lot of the properties that got damaged, on a case-by-case basis, but I'll say it's the landlord's responsibility. And it's wise for landlords to take out insurance as well. I think building insurance is compulsory, but there are other insurances that they could take out, especially those landlords that offer their properties as, furnished apartments. You can take out contents insurance, which covers not only your items in the property, but it could cover potentially the tenant's items. And then, there's other elements of insurance.
Is it for the building on the landlord? Is it compulsory?
It's compulsory to have building insurance.
Oh.
Yes. Because when the landlords buy property, there's certain structural, repairs that are the responsibility of the builder, the developer. But that runs out around 10 years' time. I think it's the same in most countries. So afterwards, it's incumbent on the owner to insure the property against any, defects or problems to do with the structure, the building itself. It could be, subsidence. Subsidence is where, for whatever reason, the building starts to sink, or, there are cracks in the walls and things like that. You can't expect the developer to be responsible for that 10 years after you've been, had the use of the property. That becomes the landlord's responsibility. And there's another insurance that landlords can take, which is owner risk. And basically, if somebody comes into your property and there's something around and they trip and they slip and they fall over and they end up in hospital, they could potentially sue the owner of the property or building.
Oh.
So if you have insurance, yes, if you have this insurance, it covers you. Or it could be even your tenant. Your tenant has some visitors and the tiling is not quite even, and then they trip and they knock their head on the tiles, and they have a concoction and bad injuries. Then as a landlord, if you have that insurance built into your general policy, you don't have to go and fork out money from your pocket. If it's a good claim, a claim is brought, then the insurance pays out because you're covered.
Wow. It's like when you think about it and think about someone slipped on the floor of my house and I'm a tenant. I can have this right to sue the landlord. Is it?
Yes, well, typically, if that third party will go after the tenant, and then the
Uh-huh.
tenant will have to raise the issue with the landlord. You say, well,
Uh-huh.
Jennifer, I came to your house, I've broken my arm because of this and that, and then you'll want to bring a claim against you, because they may not know who your landlord is.
Oh.
And then you have to report the matter to the landlord and say, I'm sorry, but this was always here in the property. Somebody's now suing me because they've been injured. So that's
Oh.
how it starts.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, just like you said, the UAE law keep changes, right? So things like this, what updates happen with the weather disaster or the storm or the rain, or now people start to raise questions and to get to know and learn. But for anything else, like just like the money lending to friends is really completely new for me. How can I stay up to date with these legal things and be aware that this is legal, this is not legal?
Yes. Well, one of the ways to stay updated is there are several lawyers that write blogs on their websites. And they have articles on LinkedIn, for example, where some of these topics are discussed. But the beauty about the newspapers, the major newspapers like Gulf News and The National, is they keep having articles on all these topical issues to educate the public about the law. So there's always a lot. There's a particular section of Gulf News Online where it addresses a lot of legal problems. There's some lawyers that actually go on there and do a Q&A. So, somebody from the public will ask a question and then they answer, and the written form is there for people
Mhm.
to refer to. So it's a very good way to know all the changes. Alternatively, do you just pick up the phone, and if you can find a law firm that deals with free consultation, you can spend maybe 20 minutes with them, ask your question, and then it gets answered. So there are many ways of finding out what's changing. So there's no excuse when people get into trouble because they're
Mhm.
making you find out.
Oh my goodness. They always lawyers take it seriously. There's no excuses about it. Okay, let's I know time is running and let's try to wrap it up. If you have the mic, you have the audience with you, and let's say what's the one golden nugget advice you would give them to approach the law or with more swagger?
Generally, for themselves, I will say whatever they're trying to achieve with the right mindset and determination, nothing is impossible. I'll advise them to keep, aiming high and reach for the stars. With regards to the law, because it's always changing in the United Arab Emirates, apart from some of the ways I've described that you can keep in touch, updated as to what is going on, but you can regularly visit the law site, the websites of lawyers, or even on Google. There's so many of the articles and blogs that lawyers write are all on Google. You just Google the topic, and so many articles come up that you can read about.
Yes, of
So
course. You will find everything outdated, outdated, you
yes,
have a lot of research to do, right?
yeah, you have a lot of research to do, but I'll say that because we're all expats in the country, it's better to familiarize yourself with the rules and regulations and stay out of trouble as best as you can. I know it's not that simple for some people, and things
Yeah.
happen, but yes, it's best to stay out of trouble and contribute to the ecosystem, because that's what they want us to do. They want us to come here and contribute something to what's going on in the ecosystem rather than cause unnecessary problems. So that's what I'll advise everyone.
Beautiful. So, how open are you to the audience, and if they can, how they can connect with you, how they can find you, website, social media, name it.
I'm omnipresent. I'm everywhere, so you can find me and my details on every single social media platform: Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, LinkedIn, and also you can Google my name and it will come up in on Google, and you find our law firm's details, and it always has a phone number, email. We have
So
a chat on our.
you offer free consultation.
We offer free consultations because we have a different strategy from some of the firms, in that we focus a lot on we recognize the value of relational capital, and we spend a lot of time building relationships with the clients. So in order to build that relationship, you need to give some value for them to come on board as clients. And this has been, the typical trend since the pandemic. The typical member of the public is, thinking this way: what's in for me, basically? Why should I go to this law firm as opposed to that law firm? And if you can give them some value upfront, not only does it demonstrate your knowledge in the subject, but it shows that you're a kind and considerate law firm and you're happy to help them. You're interested in them. It's not always making a quick buck, and that makes them loyal to you.
Yeah. A giant Monday Talks. Thanks to you, Jennifer Arkhurst, for joining us.
Thank you, Daniel, for having me. It's been a pleasure.
This conversation has been like a pure gold, pure legal gold. I know the audience is feeling empowered, so I always try to ask them to stay curious, stay informed, and get connected. And remember, the law doesn't have to be scary. Does that?
It doesn't have to be scary.
Right.
And lawyers are not scary. We're human beings just like everyone. I encourage the public to use us as much as they can. Approach us and get guidance as much as they can. Generally, everywhere in the world, people see us as scary figures. I don't know. I think we've got this kind of aura about us that puts people off. But we're human, just like you. So, and we're here to protect you and keep you out of trouble. So, please talk to us.
Much appreciated. So, to all of you, our viewers, remember to follow, like, subscribe, Monday Talkers for more insightful conversation like this one. Until next time, stay empowered and take care. Keep smiling. Thank you very much, Jennifer.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you.